ASKOL Nation, are you ready for one of the most intense and unpredictable off-seasons in recent Minnesota Vikings history? Because what's coming over the next 26 days could shape the future of this franchise in ways we didn't expect. From draft rumors to roster decisions, everything is heating up, and trust me, you're going to want to hear this. There's a storm building in Minnesota, and it's not just about the draft. It's about identity, direction, and whether this team is truly ready to compete at the highest level again. The buzz is loud, the rumors are everywhere, and fans are starting to ask the big questions. So buckle up, because today we're diving deep into the biggest Viking storylines right now. And I promise you, some of these will surprise you. Right now, the Minnesota Vikings are just 26 days away from the NFL draft, where they're expected to bring in 9 new players. That's 9 opportunities to reshape this roster, fix weaknesses, and build something special for the future. But here's the thing, this isn't just any draft cycle. This feels different. There's urgency, there's pressure, and there's a clear sense that the front office knows this is a turning point. And when you look at the current roster, it becomes obvious why the chatter is getting louder by the day. Let's start with one of the most interesting developments. Minnesota is heavily scouting running backs and wide receivers projected to go in rounds 2 through 4. That's a very specific strategy, and it tells us a lot about what they're thinking. Names like Jonah Coleman, Emmett Johnson, and Ted Hurst are popping up in discussions. These are not first-round headline guys, but they're explosive, high-upside players who could add serious depth. And when you consider the current offensive weapons, it starts to make sense, but also raises some concerns. Yes, the Vikings have elite talent at the top. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison form one of the most dangerous duos in the league, and Jordan Mason adds versatility. But after that, things get thin. Aaron Jones and Ty Felton are solid pieces, but relying on them alone might not be enough for a full-season grind. Injuries happen. Depth matters. Explosiveness off the bench matters. And here's the key detail. Minnesota hasn't signed a single new running back or wide receiver in free agency. Not one. That silence speaks volumes. It suggests the front office is planning to attack these positions in the draft, and possibly more than once. Now let's talk about a name every Vikings fan respects, Harrison Smith. The veteran leader, the heartbeat of the defense, the guy who's been doing it at a high level for over a decade. There's been speculation about retirement, but here's the reality. There's been no official announcement, no paperwork, no goodbye. And in the NFL, that usually means something. Every day that passes without news of his retirement increases the chances that he's coming back for one more run. And honestly, that would be huge for this defense. Think about it, the Vikings haven't signed any safeties in free agency either. If they believed Smith was done, they would have addressed that position already. Instead, they've stayed quiet, patient, almost like they're waiting, and that strongly hints that number 22 isn't finished just yet. Now shifting back to the offense, let's talk about Jordan Addison. There's been some noise around him, and not all of it has been positive. Off-field issues and inconsistency have raised eyebrows, but let's not forget, he's still one of the most productive young receivers this team has drafted in years. And that matters. The expectation right now is that the Vikings will exercise his 5th-year option. It's a logical move. It gives the team control while buying time to evaluate his long-term future, especially since they didn't bring back Jalen Nailor or sign any big-name replacements. If Minnesota had gone out and paid another receiver, maybe the Addison situation would look different. But they didn't. That tells us they're still betting on him. Now let's flip to the defensive side of the ball, because this is where things get really interesting heading into the draft. In recent years, the Vikings have leaned heavily toward offense in the first round. Addison, McCarthy, and Donovan Jackson all represent that trend. But now, it feels like the pendulum is about to swing back. There are clear needs on defense, safety, cornerback, and defensive tackle. These aren't minor gaps. These are starting-level concerns. And if the Vikings want to compete in 2026, they have to fix them. That's why many expect their first pick to be a defensive player. Not just for balance, but out of necessity. Prospects like Dylan Thieneman, Peter Woods, Avion Terrell, and Emmanuel McNeil Warren are all being discussed as potential targets. These are impact players, guys who could step in and contribute early. And unless the team goes completely off script with a best player available approach, defense feels like the priority. Now let's address one of the biggest rumors floating around, the quarterback situation. There's been talk, speculation, even panic among fans after the team reportedly added 2 quarterbacks, Kyler Murray and Carson Wentz. But let's clear something up. This scenario, as reported, doesn't fully align with verified roster moves and should be taken cautiously. It's important to separate speculation from confirmed facts. What we do know is this: J.J. McCarthy remains a key part of the Vikings' future. At just 23 years old, he's still developing, still learning, and still has a lot to prove. And the organization believes in him. The coaching staff has spoken highly of his work ethic, his mindset, and his potential. And here's the bigger picture. Having competition in the quarterback room isn't a bad thing. Can actually accelerate growth. The expectation is that McCarthy will continue developing and position himself to lead this team in the near future. Now let's talk about Jonathan Greenwood, because his situation has been generating a lot of buzz. Trade rumors started circulating, but recent signs suggest he's not going anywhere. His social media activity, his presence at team facilities, it all points toward stability rather than movement. And when you think about it, trading away a top pass rusher doesn't make sense if you're trying to compete. That's the key here. The Vikings are not rebuilding. They're reloading. Reports suggest the team was asking for a second-round pick in trade talks, but no deal happened. And now it looks like Greenwood will be back, possibly even working toward an extension. That would be a huge win for this defense. But even if something changes, the team has a backup plan. Dallas Turner showed flashes late last season and could step up if needed. That kind of depth is exactly what contending teams need. So when you step back and look at the full picture, it's clear the Minnesota Vikings are at a crossroads. They have talent. They have young players with upside. But they also have holes that need to be filled. And the next 26 days will be critical. The draft isn't just about adding players. It's about defining the direction of this franchise. Are they building for the future? Are they pushing to win now? Or are they trying to balance both? That's the question. And SKOL Nation, I want to hear from you. What do you think the Vikings should prioritize in the draft? Defense? More weapons? Or maybe a surprise move? Do you trust the front office's strategy so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now, because this is where the real conversation begins. If you're as fired up as I am about these Minnesota Vikings news updates, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with every Vikings fan you know. We're just getting started, and trust me, the best is yet to come. Skol. And if you think things are intense right now, just wait until draft week actually arrives. That's when the smoke screens get thicker, the rumors get louder, and every single move starts to feel like it could change the destiny of the Minnesota Vikings. Front offices begin playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Information gets leaked on purpose, prospects rise and fall overnight, and suddenly, a name you barely heard a week ago becomes a serious target. That's why staying locked in right now is so important, because what we're seeing might only be the surface of a much bigger plan. Let's go deeper into that running back situation, because it deserves more attention than it's getting. The Vikings haven't just ignored free agency at this position, they've completely avoided it. That's not normal behavior for a team that wants to compete immediately unless they truly believe the answer is coming from the draft. And when you look at prospects like Jonah Coleman and Emmett Johnson, you start to understand the vision. These are physical, explosive runners who can bring fresh energy to the offense. But here's the real question. Are mid-round rookies enough to carry the load if injuries hit? Because we've seen it before. Talent on paper doesn't always translate to consistency on the field. Now let's flip that same concern over to the wide receiver room. Behind Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, there's potential but not proven production. And in today's NFL, you need at least 3 reliable targets to keep defenses honest. That's why the interest in players like Ted Hurst is so intriguing. He's not a superstar name yet, but he has the tools to develop into a dangerous weapon. If the Vikings hit on one of these mid-round receivers, it could quietly become one of the smartest moves of the entire draft. But if they miss, That lack of depth could come back to haunt them late in the season. Now here's something that's flying under the radar, the psychological aspect of this roster. You've got veterans like Harrison Smith potentially coming back for one last ride, young stars like Addison trying to prove themselves, and developing players like J.J. McCarthy working to earn their future. That's a locker room filled with different timelines, different motivations, and different pressures. And managing that balance is not easy. This is where coaching becomes everything. Leadership, communication, and trust will define how far this team can go. Because talent alone doesn't win championships, chemistry does. And speaking of chemistry, let's talk about the defense again, because this unit could look very different very soon. If the Vikings invest early draft capital into positions like cornerback and safety, we could see an immediate shift in identity. Faster, more aggressive, more versatile. Names like Dylan Thieneman and Avion Terrell aren't just depth pieces. They're tone-setters. Players who can come in and change the way this defense attacks opposing offenses. And if that happens, don't be surprised if Minnesota starts playing a completely different brand of football in 2026. More pressure, more turnovers, more chaos for opposing quarterbacks. Now let's circle back to Jonathan Greenid, because his situation could be the key to everything. Keeping a player like him isn't just about talent, it's about sending a message. A message that says, we're not backing down, we're building something here. And that matters in the NFL. Because when players believe in the direction of the team, they play harder, they commit more, and they elevate everyone around them. Letting Greenid stay and possibly extending him could be one of the most important non-draft decisions of this offseason. And don't forget about Dallas Turner waiting in the wings. That's the kind of depth that turns good teams into great ones. One more thing that deserves attention, the front office strategy. So far, the Minnesota Vikings have been calculated, patient, and very deliberate in their moves. No panic signings, no desperate trades, just a quiet build-up towards something bigger. And that usually means one thing: they're confident in their plan. But confidence can be a double-edged sword. Because if this plan works, they'll look like geniuses. If it doesn't, the criticism will be loud and relentless. That's the reality of the NFL. So as we get closer and closer to draft night, every decision becomes magnified. Every pick will be analyzed. Every move will be questioned. And every success or failure will shape the narrative of this team for years to come. Now I've got one final question for you, Skol Nation. If you were in charge of the Minnesota Vikings right now, what would you do with that first pick? Would you go defense and fix the biggest holes? Would you add another weapon and make the offense unstoppable? Or would you shock everyone and make a bold move no one sees coming? Drop your answer in the comments. I'm reading everything and I want to know where you stand. And if you've made it this far, you're a real one. So don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss any Minnesota Vikings news updates. Because over the next few weeks, things are going to move fast. And you already know we're going to break it all down together. Skol.